So again, welcome to the Wisconsin MAP Consortium. Today we'll be talking about the consortium and the results that are provided for value added for the 2015-16 school year. First, we'll talk a little bit about education analytics, who we are, and the various services we provide. Then we'll talk about specific to the project, the consortium, the history of consortium, a little bit about value added, and then the project specifics in terms of the data and the analysis and modeling, and also the reports. We'll take an official pause for questions, but as I said earlier, please let us know when you have a question so that we can address that as soon as possible. And then there's going to be a brief discussion on assessment development, which is something that is, we've been doing education analytics for a while now, and it's something that we're getting feedback from districts that they might be interested in. So we'll have a quick discussion about that. So a little bit about education analytics. We're a nonprofit located in Madison, Wisconsin. Our president and founder is Robert Meyer, who is a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And today we'll be presenting myself, Anne Marie Weber, and Selena Eady will be presenting the assessment development section. A little bit about where we've done our work in terms of student growth models. Our staff has been working with various districts and states throughout the country on growth models for well over a decade. And this experience has showed us that really no two districts or states are exactly alike, and we need to, we like to call co-build the models and the process to fit the needs of the district or state. So we have a lot of experience in this area, and we're glad to be able to use it in Wisconsin for this project. So as a quick overview for the consortium, if you're a district and you join the consortium, what do you get? So first you get the value-added analysis that's based on the NWEA MAP assessment. Along with that analysis, you get two different types of reports. You get Excel reports that you're able to then filter and sort the data, and then PDF reports that are a little more user-friendly that help to interpret the data. And then we also, as a consortium, meet in the fall to discuss the results, the reports, and the modeling, and any questions that the consortium members might have. So first, just a little bit about value-added models. Many of you may be familiar with the oak tree analogy, and don't worry, I won't be going through it today if you've heard it 3, 4, or 5 or more times. But our friends over at the Value Added Research Center do have a quick tutorial on it, and that may be valuable if you're new to value added, or if you have staff members that maybe haven't used it before or aren't familiar. It's a good resource to be able to have to talk about value added in a non-educational education context before translating it to education. But as a quick overview and reminder for how the oak tree analogy translates into education. In the oak tree analogy, we have trees and trees and gardeners, and in education we have students and educators. For the oak tree analogy, the trees are measured in inches, and in education we have a MAP score, in this case for this consortium. In the oak tree analogy, based off of the tree's characteristics, the tree gets a customized prediction. The characteristics in that analogy are rainfall, soil, and temperature, which then help us determine a prediction for the oak tree. In education, we use the starting MAP score as well as student characteristics to come up with a prediction for that student, customized prediction. And those predictions are calculated based off of the assessments that are already given. So after the spring 2016 assessment is over, we'll use all the data that we have to come up with those predictions. Once we have the predicted score, we're able to compare that to the actual score and determine if each student exceeded or did not meet that prediction, and measure how much they either met it or did not meet the prediction. So in this first case, the student exceeded the prediction by 5 points. And in the second case, the student did not meet the prediction by 4 points. This doesn't mean that the student didn't learn anything or lost knowledge from that year. It just means that they grew at a rate that was slower than the prediction. Then we summarize the students, whether or not they beat or did not meet these predicted scores, and by how much, at various levels. So in this example, it's at the school level, but this can be done also at the district level or down to the grade and subject team level. So for school A, on average, they exceeded the predictions. So we're going to consider that an above average value added. And school B, on average, did not meet the predictions, and we're going to consider that below that average value added. Any questions about value added itself before we move on to talk about with the Wisconsin MAP Consortium specifics? Okay. So we started this consortium in 2013 with a pilot of districts who wanted to have a little more information from their NWEA MAP assessment. And we started out with reports for grades 3 through 8 in reading and math, 19 pilot districts, and about 30,000 students. The following year, we expanded grades to K through 2 and 9th grade. We also added some districts and bumped up the students to about 40,000 students. This was also the year that we piloted the PDF reports. And then last year, we actually added the PDF reports to the consortium offering and continued to add students to the consortium data set. For the 2016 analysis, so that would be for the 2015-16 school year, we're going to be investigating doing value-added reports for the language usage test. And I say investigate because we're not sure how many people have this assessment at their district. So if there's enough data from enough districts, we'll be able to add that subject to the report. And then since we now have multiple years of data for many of the districts, especially those that were with us in the pilot year, we're going to investigate adding multi-year averages to the reports. And these are very helpful to help sort of smooth out data over time as opposed to a year over year, which is less smooth and may jump around just a little bit more. So just a bit about the data process. What's really nice about this consortium is that there's no data lift from the districts. We get all of the data directly from NWEA, and we get the demographics data from DPI. And the way that works is NWEA sends data to EA. The data contains the assessment data as well as student identifiers that contain the student name, the school they attended, and their birthday. So EA then takes just the student identifiers. We don't send any assessment data to DPI, and we send the student identifiers to DPI. DPI is then able to match the students to the state information, which allows EA to be able to get the state demographics information without the districts having to upload any files anywhere. And we're also able to get it all in one file in one consistent format. So after DPI runs their matching algorithm and matches all the students to the state information, They send us their information. We're able to match that with the NWEA data and run the value-added models based on the data available. So after we run the models and we have the results, we create reports. The reports contain the subjects available, so reading and math and possibly language usage. In grades K through 9, now that's depending on the grades that you test in your district. So if you test in grades 3 through 8, your district reports will be for 3 through 8. They'll be in Excel and PDF, again, for the Excel users that may want to filter and sort those results. And then PDFs are nice for a nice visual representation of the data, and it helps also to interpret the results. And we'll do a walkthrough of the reports, the PDF reports in just a bit. And the results are at the district, school, and grade levels, all for the specific subjects. So there's going to be an overall district score for reading and math separately, and then individual grades for the district. So there'll be a district reading 3rd grade score and a district reading math score. This is an example of the Excel report. It's not quite as flashy and pretty as the PDF that we send out, but again, it's nice to be able to filter and sort these results. It contains the value-added estimates as well as the confidence interval information and the value-added color codes that I'll talk about in more detail in just a bit. So next we're going to go through an example PDF report. These PDF reports are available at both the district and school level. And then it's broken down by the grades and subjects. So there's a file for the district report and then one file for each school. So in the reports, you're able to see the grades and subjects that the value-added estimates are for, as well as the number of students. This number of students may not exactly match like attendance data for any given time. This will contain the amount of students, the number of students that were actually used in the model. And for those students, we have to have both a pre and a post test in order to include them in the model. Then we have the value-added estimates and confidence intervals, as well as the color codes that I'll talk through in just a bit. And then there's a description about the value-added and confidence interval that helps people interpret these results. And then there's a little note below each grade about the model group. And after I go through the color codes, we're going to talk a bit about the modeling and what the spring-to-spring note means. Any questions about the report so far before I move on to the color codes? Okay. So the color codes help us combine the value-added estimate and the confidence interval. The value-added estimate is the center of the confidence interval, with the confidence interval depicting the range of a 95% confidence for the value-added estimate. Typically, confidence intervals are wider when the number of students is smaller and for a group of educators, and narrower when the number of students is larger for a group of educators. When light green appears on the report, that means that the confidence interval has crossed 3, and the value-added reports 3 is average growth. Light green value-added results show growth that is considered average. That means your students are growing at about average rate for similar students. If the confidence interval is entirely above 3, the color is slightly darker green. The green value-added results show growth that is considered above average. Your students are growing faster than characteristically similar students. And then for value-added estimates with the confidence interval are completely above 4, the color is a dark green. Dark green value-added results show growth that is considered far above average. And on the other side of the reports, if you see colors that, these bubbles that are orange, that means that the confidence interval is entirely below 3. And so the value-added results show that growth is considered below average. So the students are growing slower than characteristically similar students. It doesn't mean that these students lost knowledge. It just means that they're growing at a slower rate than characteristically similar students. And then if the confidence interval is entirely below 2, the color is a dark orange. And dark orange value-added results show growth that is considered far below average. If you're familiar with the color codes from the WKCE value-added reports, these use similar methodology as those colors. The colors are just themselves are slightly different. So before it was that gray was average, and then green and blue. But we had some user testing with teachers and talked about the colors and wanted to match sort of the interpretation of average being good. And so we switched that to green, and gray was sort of given a bad connotation. So that's why we had the switch, but it's the same methodology that's used in terms of defining the colors. Any questions on the color codes in the reports? Now I'd like to take a little break to, hopefully you have somebody with you, or if not, you can think about these questions by yourself, some interpretation questions for these reports. So I'm just going to pause to let you discuss that with your team or think about these questions. Okay, hopefully that gave you some time to think about these. And if you'd like to type in sort of your answers in the questions or chat area of the GoToWebinar. First question is, which grade level team is most effective at growing their students? And the answer here is that the 6th grade team has the highest value-added estimate of 3.7, so that would be the team that's considered the most effective at growing their students. The second one, can we tell which group of students has the highest proficiency rate? On this report, we don't have proficiency rates, so that's not information that's on here. This is strictly a growth report. And lastly, if this was your school, how would you start talking about this data with your teaching teams? So go ahead, if you have any, come up with some fantastic ideas, go ahead and type those into the chat box. Some things that districts use these reports for and start talking with their teams about these data is they use these to help show off teams that are doing really well, and then start having some conversations with some teams that may need some more additional support. It's really important for us that when we see these dark orange estimates, that we be careful not to name, shame, and blame anybody, and that it's a way to start conversations and uncover, discover, and recover as a professional learning community. We like to consider these reports the start of the conversation. So questions about the reports, the color codes, the information that's in the reports before we move on to the value-added model details. Okay, so if you remember back on the example report, there was a piece of information that showed whether or not we were using a spring-to-spring or fall-to-spring model. For our analysis, spring-to-spring is the default model, and we use this for a variety of reasons. There's more consistent test windows, so within the spring or fall testing, districts test it a variety of times. And that would create different lengths of test windows or teaching days between the tests. When we're using a spring-to-spring model, districts usually test in the spring about the same time. So then you're going to have about 365 days, calendar days, in between the two testing time periods. Whereas if you're using a fall-to-spring model, you have a wide range of number of days there. The spring tests are more widely used in the consortium. Not everybody tests in the fall, so we're able to include more districts that way. And then also we have some information that spring tests are taken more seriously by students. The fall to spring tests are used when the spring to spring is not available. Most often this is the case where it's the first grade that a district tests in. So if a district tests in grades 3 through 8, the third grade results will be a fall to spring model because we won't have a second grade spring test from the prior year to use as a pretest for the spring, for the third grade model. So whichever grade is your lowest grade that you test in, whether it's kindergarten, first, second, or third, that grade is most likely going to have a fall to spring model underneath the note in the report. So in talking with districts from the consortium, I listed a few places here of when districts use these reports and how they use these reports. And they typically use these reports at either data retreats, or I've heard that some districts use these when a greater subject team has a meeting specific to them and they've asked for some more data about their students. The school reports can be used for principal meetings, and they share this data in a variety of ways. They can share their PDF reports with the educators, be able to use this time to praise successes, using those medium and dark greens to share what's really working well in their teams, and then figure out where some of the struggles are in the medium and dark orange results, and possibly match those up. Those teams up with the same subject, dark green team, to try and figure out where improvements can be made. So in terms of timeline for this work, we're signing districts up now in the spring. We're hoping to have everyone signed up by June 1st. We'll have the analysis over the summer and then have the reports out this fall. A lot of districts have mentioned that the earlier those reports, the better. They have a lot of data meetings at the beginning of the year, or data retreats. Everyone's getting back into the swing of things, so the earlier the better that they can sort of decompress about the previous year before they start this upcoming school year, the better. But what we're sort of working up against is that some of the districts test into June. We don't get the test data from NWEA until the end of June. It takes 2 weeks for DPI to do their magic with the matching all of the IDs to the state data. So we a lot of times can't begin our analysis until into July, and well into July, and then it takes about 6 weeks to do the analysis and reports. So we're going to try and get those out as soon as possible, but just know that we're trying to get them out as soon as possible, and it's a matter of when we get the data. So next steps, how do you sign up? The invoicing will be through CISA 2. We bill at $1 per tested student, and we count that once per student, so per unique student. If little Johnny is tested in both reading and math, we only charge $1 for little Johnny. So it's $1 per tested unique student. Again, that's invoiced through CISA 2. We invoice after the delivery. I know some people are concerned about how much to budget for this. And so you can think about it in terms of how many licenses you have for unique students in reading and math. And we won't be charging for the language usage this year when we investigate something. So that'll just be like a bonus on the reports. So if you're trying to figure out about how much it's going to be for the unique students in math and reading in the subjects that you test in. And when they're invoiced, it's only the students that we actually use in the analysis that have a pre-test and a post-test are able to be included in the model. So how to sign up, there's 2 agreements. I'm going to be emailing those out to the districts next week. There's the value-added contract with Education Analytics, and then there's a data release with NWEA. Those are due on June 1st. I'll be emailing those out next week and following up with you to see if you have any questions about the analysis, the reports, the consortium, the agreements. Be thinking of any questions that you have for me, and I'd love to talk more with you about this. Any questions about the value-added consortium, the analysis, the reports? Next, we'll be moving on to the assessment, literacy, and development. So, Selena, if you're still on the line.
Hi there. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Hi, Selena. So I'm going to give you control of my screen here. And you should be able to move on to the next slide.
Great. Let's test this out. So as Anne-Marie mentioned, my name is Selena Eady, and I want to thank you for letting me steal the last couple minutes of this webinar to talk about a different vein of work, which is the assessment of literacy and development work that EA has supported. Anne-Marie mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that quite a few states and districts that we've worked with in the past have been indicating interest in providing assessment literacy and assessment development support to their teachers in schools. So since we have some experience in this space with some current projects we're supporting, we wanted to share a little bit about this work with you. In particular, just in the education policy context, there may be a couple reasons why this is relevant to folks on this webinar. The first of which is the major growth of SLOs. So this is just a glimpse at the number of states or districts within states that either allowed or directly implemented student learning objectives in 2011. And these student learning objectives are utilized as a way to measure teacher contribution to growth by setting learning goals for, and this is particularly for non-tested grades and subjects. So you can see that here from 2011 to 2016, we've had a major growth in terms of states and districts that implement student learning objectives. And this is partially because for those non-tested grades and subjects areas, there aren't necessarily reliable or valid tests out there that are standardized that can be used. And so student learning objectives are an appealing option to measure student growth. Another reason why we might be interested in assessment development or assessment literacy is the much more recent passage of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. So a brief overview of that, this was passed recently, I think as of early 2015, and replaces No Child Left Behind. And a couple interesting points about this law, particular in regards to assessment. First is that states and districts are now allowed to implement multiple statewide interim assessments rather than implement one single assessment, as was required by No Child Left Behind. So this puts a lot of focus now on the state and district level around what interim assessments do you implement and what interim assessments do you have. Along similar lines, through ESSA, there's a smaller act, it's called the SMART Act, and what this act will do is provide funding to several state and local education agencies for them to actually conduct an audit of their current assessments and current assessment systems to streamline, to determine what assessments they want to keep, and to also determine where there are gaps in terms of assessment coverage. So while ESSA moves away from some of the high-stakes accountability provisions of No Child Left Behind, there is still this emphasis on assessment. And really, while more rules are going to be negotiated soon, the main takeaway is that there's a lot less federal oversight. So a lot of this work around assessment is being put on states and districts for their own control. So with that in mind, the reason why we have been supporting work around assessments is because districts and states have very soon realized that in order to provide high quality measures of growth, we need high quality assessments for these non-tested grades and subjects. So what we mean by high quality is we need an assessment that accurately measures students' knowledge, and we need to ensure that teachers and leaders in the classroom and at the school and district level understand the assessment results or the assessment data so that they can set accurate learning goals for their students. A little bit more context when we talk about high quality assessment. EA really offers a technical perspective around assessment. So we're not the content experts, but we do have a team of technical experts on our staff, including a psychometrician who provides a lot of knowledge and guidance around two different measures. What we call reliability, so determining if an assessment's results are consistent across time, as well as validity. And what we mean by validity is that the test should measure what it's intended to measure. So for example, if we were to try to measure someone's weight, we wouldn't use a measuring stick. Or if we were trying to measure their height, we wouldn't use a scale. Instead, we want to make sure that the measure in and of itself is appropriate. And then from a teacher perspective, we want to make sure that assessments that teachers are using in the classroom actually align to the standards and the content that they teach. Certainly you hear some different perspectives on that when it comes to more standardized assessment. So there's a couple different practices that we can implement in order to ensure that our assessments meet that reliability and validity standards. So first of all, one practice that we've supported implementing and that we see in the field is just professional development for teachers and for leaders. So training around data, training around assessment literacy, making sure that the folks who are designing and implementing the assessments in the classroom feel comfortable doing so. A second practice that supports reliable and valid assessments is assessment analysis. So similar to that provision that we saw in the SMART Act with ESSA, the idea that it's important to audit one's assessment system and see, do these measure what they're meant to measure? Are these high quality assessments? Are they valid? Are they reliable? So we'd also recommend analysis as a way to support valid and reliable assessments. And then finally, and I'll show you a slide with a little bit more information about this next, but a third and most intensive way is to support a teacher-led assessment development cycle. So the idea here is that if we have certain subject areas or certain grade levels where there is a dearth of assessment, working directly with the teachers to develop shared assessments that meet technical criteria but also cover and measure the content that they're meant to cover and measure. So just to give you a glimpse of this third practice, here's a pretty high-level view of what an assessment development cycle would look like. We don't need to walk through all of these steps, but this slide is just meant to show you that there are many steps to the process, but at the end of it, the goal is to have high-quality assessments, high-quality assessment items that the teachers can use in their classroom. So just note that this is something that EA has supported and can help guide you through this process as well. We found that along with producing high-quality assessments through an assessment development cycle, there's also some positive professional learning and professional development results. A couple things that we've noted through our work specifically with a large school district, LA Unified School District, is that teachers reported that they had a greater understanding of their instructional goals, subject standards, and their curriculum. And part of the benefit of this is by bringing teachers collaboratively together to work on developing and implementing assessments. It leads to really powerful conversations around instruction and teaching and other really important components. I'll also note, so you'll see here at the bottom of the slide, we have a link here. Feel free to visit our website, and we have a more detailed write-up about our work with LA Unified School District. But I'll also note that we've had some success supporting assessment development for non-tested grades and subjects in smaller districts across 3 different states. So we are very open to and interested in building a consortium around assessment development and would be interested in talking more about that. So yeah, this slide just shows there's definitely a range of different levels of assessment support and intervention, anywhere from one-off assessment development trainings or 1 to 2 day PD opportunities through assessment analysis, or the hands-on intensive teacher-led assessment development cycle. But we did want to just take this opportunity to let you know that that is an area that EA has experienced and is currently supporting projects, and wanted to share that with you in case there was any interest. And Anne-Marie, I'll hand it back over to you for you to explain how folks should indicate interest to EA.
Thanks, Selena. So if this is something that interests you, certainly email us to find out more information. But if you're on the GoTo right now, one thing that you can do that's nice about GoTo webinars, just use that questions feature to indicate that you're interested in this, that all the questions are captured by GoTo webinar, so we'll be able to reference it later and follow up with you if you're interested. But also, if you just think about this later and you're like, you know, this assessment development stuff really sounds like something that we would be interested, we want more information, please contact Carl Brennan, and he'll be able to get you more information about that. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll stay on for a few minutes if you have any questions about anything that was on the presentation today, whether it was the consortium, the value-added analysis or reports, as well as the assessment development. Let us know by using the raise your hand feature or the chat feature to ask a question. Let us know what you need, and we'll stay on for a few minutes to answer those questions. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll stay on for a few minutes. If you're heading out, have a great day.